Okay, so this is the melon template that we need to make 7 more to fit. So the first thing you want to do is line up your template and figure out exactly how big is it. So my template is about 3 1/8 inches by 10 1/8, or just over 10 and just over 3. So I want to make sure that I cut enough fabric on my strips. We'll need 4 strips, one here, 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 and here. So I want to make sure that I cut the strips wide enough so I have a seam allowance here and then a seam allowance top and bottom. So I think I'm going to go for 4 inches of cut. So 2 inches for each strip, and then when you sew them together, you'll lose a 1/2 inch for your seam allowance, so that'll give us 3 1/2 inches. So that should be more than enough to set this template on and then cut it out. Okay, so here is my scrap of fabric that I had left over of this one. So this top edge went all the way across the width, because remember we started by cutting out a 15-inch square and then sub-cutting that into 4 7 1/2 inch squares. So we had this long strip. So this is where I cut my initial 4 3-inch squares from. So I'm going to cut another 3-inch square from this corner here, and then from this edge down here, it turns out that it is about, this is the edge of the selvage here, so it's just over 6 inches. So it's a little bit longer than I need it to be, but that's okay because I can cut that off. So what I want to do is I want to measure over 2 inches. And trying to do this one-handed is not going to be great. So I'm going to cut a 2-inch strip here and move it over, and I need 2 2-inch strips. So this is the coordinating fabrics. So I've already cut the 3-inch square, and these are my 2 2-inch strips that I cut off the bottom of this. Okay, so let me cut these out and I'll be right back. Okay, so now we have, whoops, our 2 strips, 2 inches wide, and we have our 3-inch square here. Again, one-handed is not the way to do this. Okay, so next I need to go look over here at my notes to see, for the peach and gray, how do I need to line this up? So according to my notes, the gray needs to be in the bottom. So I'm leaving the selvage edge on because I'm going to cut it off eventually anyway, so I don't need to worry about that. But so according to this diagram, we have the gray in the bottom on the right and the peach in the top on the right. So I have a gray, and then I'm going to lay the peach on top, and all my fabric wants to stick together. Okay, so here's the peach, and then the other gray will go here, the other peach will go down here. Okay, and then the other 2 pieces of fabric that I have are the 3-inch squares. And so once I sew this together, I will look over here and see where it goes in my quilt layout. So it's going to go down there because I can see there's one missing right there. So I'll figure out where these 2 squares go in the orientation of this piece. But anyway, so I will take these 4 pieces to the sewing machine, sew all 4 of them together, and then I will use my melon template and trace it on the fabric and cut it out. And then when I'm through, I will have a set that looks like this. So here is a made melon from cutting off the scraps of my leftover fat quarters. And then these are the 2 3-inch squares that will go on the end of the arcs. So again, I will have to refer back to my quilt that I've got laid out on my design mat on my floor and figure out the orientation before I try to sew them together. But anyway, that's just a quick little how-to on how to make your made melons. I just wanted to cover that. So it all depends on the size of the template you're using to cut your melons from. So just measure it, make sure you add at least a 1/2 inch up to 1 inch in width, and then split that in half. So if it's, you know, I split 4 inches, so my pieces are 2 inches wide by the width of this leftover fat quarter strip. If you need it to be more precise, then, you know, I would say my template was just over 10 inches tall, so I would round up to 11 to make sure I have enough room, and then that would mean I would cut 2 pieces 5.5 inches. So it's easy enough to just cut off the bottom edge of this strip, and then you can see once you're through cutting the 3-inch square and the strips, you still have a, you know, decent size scrap left over. And this, let's just see how big this is. That's 10. So it's about 6 inches wide. I don't know. We'll see what we end up doing with those scraps. Maybe something for the back, or maybe, I don't know. It's not, you need to use bias binding, so I was thinking maybe we could do a scrappy binding, but straight binding doesn't lend itself too well to all these curves. So anyway, we'll see. Maybe that'll be for another project for another day. But anyway, I just wanted to leave this with you on how to construct your made fabric for your 7 additional melons. Once you've identified the list you need and the orientation of the fabric, then you can cut them all out and then sew them together, and you're ready to put more arcs and melons together. Okay, good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.